You're unmuted.
Eldest, middle, and
The middle one
youngest.
always bolts. He's so naughty. And then he'll hide and laugh about it.
It's not funny.
It's the
He
middle.
did it in Sam's Club and a mom drug him back to me.
Oh,
And he was like, "Get your hands off of me."
oh my God.
It was so funny. Yeah.
I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Benzie County Committee of the Whole. Today is February 28th, 2023. We are in the Frank Walter House Boardroom. Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Here,
you're not.
Here.
Markey,
Present.
aye.
Here,
Roloffs,
Here.
Sauer,
Here.
Worsakki,
Here.
all present.
please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We have agenda in front of us. We have an addition to the agenda. Katie, where would you like to put that?
Just under topics for continued discussion. It's fine.
And, okay, I'll put it above A, so we'll start with that. And what do you want to call it?
Just social worker deputy position.
And then the only other change I would like to make, if it's all right with everyone, is to flip C and D and have the strategic plan review as our last topic of continued discussion. Are there any other changes?
Motion to approve as amended. Second.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Minutes from February 14th to consider.
Motion to approve the minutes on the 14th. Markey will second.
Support. Is there further discussion? None. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And that brings us to our first public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak? Being none, I will close public comment, and that brings us to our topics for continued discussion and the social worker deputy conversation.
So late last year, we had a lot of conversation about a social worker deputy position, duly trained officer, as well as 24-hour road patrol and bailiff positions. They kind of all were at the same time. When we agreed to a 3-year agreement with Central Wellness to fund a social worker deputy position, we had talked about making it a contracted employee so our hands weren't tied by the union. As we've went through this process and Greg has interviewed folks for that position, it has come clear to us that if we try to make that a contracted position, the union will fight it and they will win. And so we're at a point now where we do have somebody that we believe would fit that mold quite well. But the position would be a unionized position. It would not be a contracted position. If we are very explicit in how we portray this to the union and to everyone else that it is a grant funded position, it should not tie our hands, so that if the program is not working and we decide that that position is unnecessary for the sheriff's office, it's not going to tie our hands that we have to somehow find the funding for that position because it's explicitly a grant funded position. But it is part of the union that it would receive all those same benefits as any other deputy in the union. And so I wanted to just bring that up and get everyone's general nod on that, because I know that we talked about that position being contracted at one point, but it's come to our attention that that's just not going to work for this position. The funding is still coming from Central Wellness. Nothing is changing there. It's completely funded by Central Wellness. I spoke to Chip about it being a Central Wellness employee. And again, that's not something that's on the table as logical either. So it would be a Benzie County employee, but it's specifically a grant funded position so that when and if grant funding goes away, and we believe that position is unnecessary, it still could be removed off the roster. What is everyone's general feel on that?
Undersheriff, a couple of questions? Is this going to be an MCOL certified officer or deputy?
Yes, it is.
And are they going to work a regular shift and take calls?
They are. When they're not obligated to the training that goes with this, and the specific calls for service relating to the mental health position, they will be a certified deputy taking calls like everybody.
So then if there's a need for them, will in their off shift, will they get called in, or is that how it's going to work, or do you not know yet?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, on duty, as part of the scheduling process, if they get called off for a half a day to go work on a mental health case, is that going to short what you have on the road?
I think that I've accounted for that pretty well, and it won't deplete from the minimum requirements of the road deputy on most occasions. And I think we'll be able to cover that.
I was under the impression this was in addition to your normal road patrol, and it's not part of counting into what you needed for 24/7.
It is, I can't do 24/7 without this position. It helps fill that gap. Really, if you consider the two school resource positions in this position, that's probably one full position in the times they're not working on their obligations under contract or millage.
You're going to do something with the union that stipulates this job could go away in 3 years when the funding disappears.
So
Very concerned.
the union contracts, I mean, the county holds that authority that if there's no funding, then there's no funding and positions are eliminated. Where we have to be very careful is, in our adopted roster that we adopt every year for our budget, we need to be specific that it's a grant funded employee. When we refer to this position, anytime in communications with the union or other, we just have to be explicit that this is a grant funded position so that it's clear that this position could go away if the funding runs out.
Boy that takes this job, I fully understand.
I have had many conversations with our biggest potential employee who was taking his psychological exam today about the possibility of that. I've also explained to him that through attrition, I haven't seen a year here yet that I haven't filled a road deputy spot. So we're looking 3 years from now. I anticipate that in that time we'd have at least 3 vacancies. I know of one coming next month, one next year, and one the following year that are eligible. The one next month is definitely going to happen. I think by attrition, this wouldn't be a person that would have to be laid off if we cut that out of the budget. I will tell you, 3 years is a new election cycle from now. But speaking as the undersheriff today, who knows in 3 years, because we do have an election coming up in 2 years, as the undersheriff today, I will not allow anybody to be laid off from our department without me going for. I have a pension, and I have in some of these kids, this is their job, and I would leave and let everybody step up one before I would lay somebody up.
My concern is, I'm guessing most of this money is state funded. Central. And they have a tendency to just done like they did with the school resource officer years ago and federal programs. Makes me nervous.
So Central Wellness actually has a pot of money sitting there. That's their money that they're trying to figure out how to spend. They're not dependent upon getting additional funds from state or whoever. This is money they have sitting there that they need to spend. And so Chip is committed to 3 years. He's assured me at least 5 to 7 years with the funding that's there at the potential right now. But no, this isn't funding that he's depending on getting some other funding. It's already sitting there and he needs to get it off his books is essentially how he put it to me.
Could figure out a different way of spending.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional costs with this being a union employee instead of a contract employee that Central Wellness is going to have to approve paying for?
So the contract that we have with Central Wellness is open-ended as to what they'll pay for, and it gives a cap amount of about $180,000 over the next 3 years. And so if we're approaching that $180,000, that's when we'll have to have those discussions with Chip and potentially amend the agreement in place. But the agreement is not explicit that it's paying for a car and wages and, it's here's $180,000 using on this position and whatever that position entails.
That money is reimbursed quarterly.
Mhm.
So every dollar that is spent on that position, Susie is tracking, including where we're at right now in this interview process and physical testing, and now the psychological exam. Every bit of that is tracked, and at the end of the quarter, will be billed to Central Well.
Mhm.
So we have discretion, design the
Correct.
position to fit within the budget.
Correct.
Greg, what's the first year gonna cost?
First year is going to cost, including the car. We had that written down in the agreement. I'm going to go roughly, and we're halfway through the year, but the first 12 months, including the car, is going to be about $100,000.
So there isn't enough. Central Wellness is 180,000, go 3 years.
Well, we're already halfway through this year.
Right.
We won't have another car and all that big equipment, so it'll just be the salary after that. Our officers
Salaries.
don't make as much as you think.
Salary with benefits is 60,000 or less a year, is that it?
Because at this point, they're going to be put on that wage table, so they're starting at the bottom and working up.
That even gonna apply to somebody that's do it in-house? That person gonna force back to the bottom? I
We
guess.
did post it with
No.
in-house, following with the union contract. We
Yeah, we already
posted
did
it
that.
in-house, which we have to do first,
Yeah,
and nobody applied for that.
okay.
So that is why we're going out of house. Nobody applied in-house for that position. It is we've called it, I think, the county administrator and I have called it a unicorn position.
It is a unicorn.
The person that I have in mind, through many conversations with Chip and emails in the last 3 weeks, Chip basically vetted him and said, yes, this is a kid for the job. And there's 2 different positions within that. One's a bachelor's level practicing position. The other is what I'd call a parapro. And this young man is eligible for the parapro position because of his prior police experience, his mental health experience with the city of Detroit PD, and some very, very unique personal experiences in his life that actually made Chip very happy and said, this is the guy we want, and I give you the go ahead for what it's worth.
We may have discussed this, but just for clarification, this is going to be a deputy with social worker training. Is Central Wellness going to pull that employee away from duties here to attend to situations they have, or is this a Benzie County employee with those skill sets for things on the job here?
This is a Benzie County employee with those skill sets for on the job here.
Okay.
Now, the definition is intensive crisis stabilization. That means, like what we do every day, except this person will be certified to do it. They are getting that person stabilized and writing a petition to get them to Munson where they need to be, and taking care of that.
You're going to also privy to Central Wellness documents.
Yes, and their billing system. One of our longest standing problems with Central Wellness is that patient-client privilege, and we do have meetings with them every month now, which has helped that. But this person has access to know, this deputy will have access to those records to know who they're dealing with and what they're dealing with, and if they're already a Central patient, which is huge. Put you ahead of the game by hours.
Other questions for Under Sheriff Hubers?
So I just wanted to get everyone's general consensus on this. If I'm hearing no heartburn over this, we will continue to proceed with the candidate in question.
The heartburn I would have is that position goes away and the undersheriff decides to step down so that person doesn't get laid off.
I may not even be here then. That's 3 years from now. It's a whole new election cycle.
I think as long as we're careful that the language acknowledges that it's completely dependent on funding. So we can't really say it's even 3 years. It's just year to year.
It's a grant funded position. When the money's gone,
Yeah.
the position could be gone.
Because I mean, based on the math that you just gave me, we wouldn't make it through the 3rd year. They'd have to step up and provide more money. So as long as we understand that we're not going to the general fund for it,
Correct.
Are you looking for a consensus or are you looking for a motion to move forward?
I hear your consensus.
And I think that it, in general, it already was approved in the memorandum of agreement with Centra and us was approved and signed and approved by Costover and Toski also.
Mhm.
We just want to make sure that everyone is aware and approved that this can't be a
Contracted
contract
employee.
position where this person receives less benefits than anyone else that works for the sheriff's office.
we weren't
Very
going to pay them less,
transparency.
were we?
No, but there was some thought that we wouldn't provide all of the benefits that we provide somebody else because it was a contract person. And that was the concern that I wanted to make very clear, that this person was a county employee and they received all those benefits. Because we would lose that with the FOPLC union in somewhere in the process. Most expensive part of that would be arbitration, obviously, and then we'd lose the slot.
Lose a lot.
Yeah.
Is it? Otherwise, you just make them a 1099 employee.
I couldn't find anybody to do that. No way.
Not for a police officer,
way.
no.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to our committee of the whole discussion. I'm sure you're all wondering why that's on the agenda and what that's about. So I am going to nutshell this. This started with a conversation between Katie and I, and Bob came in a little bit later. When I became a commissioner and was introduced to the committee of the whole, it was a little bit different than where we are today. My understanding is that there used to be separate committees who met and talked about different things as far as building and grounds and finance. And the consensus was that all the commissioners wanted to be in on the conversations. Therefore, the committee of the whole was formed. When I started, I remember the committee of the whole being very centered on budget amendments. People coming and saying, oh, this came up and we need money for this. And oh, this came up and that's under. And it has changed over the course of 4 years because of the planning, in big part to this body, the 5-year capital plan. These aren't surprises anymore. These are things that are planned for. These are things much like our meeting this morning where we needed a car. Is it in the budget? Did we plan for it? Yes. Okay, let's move forward. So it's changed a little bit. When we sit down to do agenda review and look at committee of the whole, like there's nothing on finance. There's nothing on building and grounds there. So the conversation evolved into, should this be more of a study work session instead of a committee of the whole? Should this be an opportunity, much like other entities, municipalities, to have an opportunity between meetings or after one meeting to share thoughts, ideas, talk about ARPA, talk about goal setting, talk about strategy, because essentially what we're doing now is not really the committee of the whole. We don't have a whole bunch of separate issues. And I'm going to say again, or I'm going to say for the first time, the makeup of our administration has changed, and our administrator is very much a gatekeeper to a certain degree and vets what comes before us very thoroughly before we see it. And so I think the avenue to get things considered are less through the committee of the whole and more through administration to the Board of Commissioners. So that's the idea. Should the nature of this meeting be changed to more of a work session study group format?
The first question would be, find the difference between a study group and committee of the whole.
When we sit down at the agenda review to talk about this meeting, we immediately tick off a bunch of the components that made this committee of the whole. There's HR, finance, building and grounds, all these things that we were supposed to consider separately that used to be different entities and combined into the committee of the whole aren't necessary. because we're essentially talking about topics for continued discussion, which is more of a work group study session kind of format would be more appropriate for that kind of thing.
And the other thing that we talked about is, it seems a bit redundant to recommend something to yourself just to approve again. And so, like I had said to both Rhonda and Bob, when we were talking about this, downtown, we'd have a study session and then we would move it forward to the Board of Commission or City Commission for approval. If I can't get your general consensus out of a study session on whether or not something should move forward, then we need to talk about it further. I shouldn't have to expect an approval from you. We should have vetted it through a study session enough that I can hear your general consensus that this needs to move forward for approval. If I can't get that from you, then we bring it back to another study session to do some more discussing and fact finding.
And what I do like about Committee of the Whole, and I'm going to say this, is that when we do consider things and recommend to ourselves to approve it 2 weeks later, it pumps the brakes. It
Mhm.
gives us an opportunity to think about it. And I do like that about Committee of the Whole, because there have been times where subjects that move forward, we pull them from the consent calendar and they warrant further discussion. But I do believe in the idea that Katie's talking about, where if it's not ready to go to a vote, we will continue discussing it until we're ready to bring it up at a full meeting. So this is just, for consideration, and I'd be interested to know if people want to think about it and discuss it at a later meeting, or if you like it the way it is and don't want to make any changes. Looking at you, Gary.
So you want to,
So, and I'll add another thing too. So the county administrators listserv, somebody had posed the question about meeting makeup and frequency and those sorts of things. And the general consensus of counties now, obviously factoring out Wayne County and some of those really big ones, but the general consensus of county meetings was that they had just one study session or work session and then 1 to 2 regular meetings. So the fact that we have 4, we were meeting heavy compared to most other counties as well.
well, my recollection of why we did this was because every time we did something through finance, we ended up rehashing it in the meeting. I like this format because if there is something that we go through and we decide to push it forward, and all of a sudden you start checking things out on your own and you say, this isn't going to work, or this is not what I thought I just voted for. It gives you that opportunity, pull it from the calendar and have the discussion.
You could still do that.
Having a couple weeks gap or stuff between it, to me, gives you a better chance of looking everything over and vetting it out, where you're not making a snap decision that you're going to regret later down the road. So,
Would it not do the same then if we talked about it? at a
except
study
would we
session,
make
right?
recommendations? The recommendation would be her belief of what happened in the meeting. That way I'm interpreting this. If you say, sounds like everybody's in favor of, kind of like what we did today with the social worker, we'll move ahead. And
Well, that one's kind of a unique situation because we really hashed out that topic months ago. So that's unique. So in the future, though, it would still come to a study session. We'd still have those discussions. If I'm understanding the consensus to bring it forward, it's on the Board of Commissioners agenda. It doesn't limit you from then discussing it more at the meeting. You could still do that, and you could still pull it from a consent calendar and those sorts of things. It's just, it doesn't delay things as much as maybe this would. And honestly, we're really doing that now. This whole new makeup, we're really doing it now. We talk about continued topics for discussion. We don't bring them forward until they're ready. And a lot of things aren't even on the committee of the whole anymore because I've already vetted them. I provide you a concise memo, which really talks about the whole topic. So, we're already kind of doing it. We really are.
So other than labels, I'm still not understanding what the difference is. What mechanically, what
Formality,
happens?
maybe?
It's
I don't know.
It's a
That question still
formality.
hasn't been answered for me yet.
It really is just a formality.
So it's basically what we call it.
Yeah,
Doing the same thing as we're going to do today, but we're going to call it a work session.
But we're not gonna be
Essentially.
Doing a
And we're not-
recommendation to ourselves.
correct.
We are going to do we're not moving on anything. We're just discussing it.
We're discussing it,
Well,
yes.
we could do that under the committee of the whole also.
Are we gonna continue with?
Formal action to move it forward.
meetings? Limited.
As needed. So I would look at that. There's some things like building and grounds, we need to meet. A few things in this building I'd like to complain about. That I'd like to see get front and center.
We all have those complaints.
Also, I've asked that every quarter we take a deeper dive into our finances. Are we going to do that during a regular meeting or are we going to do that on either committee of the whole or the
Study work.
study work?
I think that's up to this group. I mean, I don't know when our administrator intended to present it, depending on what calendar could accommodate
Yeah.
that discussion.
So quarterly would make it in April. That's why it hasn't been on the agenda yet, for the year.
Oh, I understand. And you provided us the information.
And I provide monthly the information. As far as if it's on morning or afternoon, I mean, to me, that's more of just, you're not taking any formal action. So that's more of like a work group study session discussion item, committee of the whole, if you have it. That's not really a board of commissioner, board of commissioner meetings are typically reserved for those actionable items and those, whereas work group, you're doing your fact finding, you're doing your due diligence to get you to that decision at a regular meeting.
I don't, to me, it's semantics, so I don't have an opinion one way or the other. If the leadership group wants to change what we call it, I don't see any harm in doing that, as long as we don't lose sight of what we want to accomplish during the discussion, because you're dead on. That's how we ended up with committee of the whole. We basically consolidated all of those smaller committees and said, we want to be part of the bigger discussion.
I think it's worked out exceptionally well. The commissioners have a concept of what finance is going on and things like that, and buildings and grounds, all of it. And I think that's really been beneficial because in the past, know what it was in the past.
So those things would still happen. Are you saying that you like to have those designated topics on the agenda? I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Not necessarily, I guess. I don't. This is all.
You guys may not know this about me, but I don't like a lot of meetings.
No,
I know.
When did
I
this
know.
start?
And if we're already doing more meetings than most counties, what if we do this study session instead of having 4 meetings, cut it down 1 and have 3?
And we
Whether we do the Tuesdays or do 2 in one of the other Tuesdays, does this make sense or no?
no, you didn't.
Like do 3 Tuesdays a month instead of 2?
And that was one of the things we
them is-
talked about too, is maybe you do 3 separate Tuesdays. Or you still have 1 long day and 1 short day, or we still have 2 long days. Sometimes it gets a little difficult to fill up the committee of the whole agenda because we're talking about these things at the Board of Commissioners meeting, or we're doing our due diligence on the back end. To me, you hired me to do a job, and part of that job is to do the fact finding and come up with a developed recommendation towards you. I think in prior administration, they brought everything to you at step 1, and I bring things to you at step 5. Because I don't feel that you're paying me to help you make a good decision. And so I need to do my due diligence before I come to you. Otherwise I look silly because I don't know what we're talking about. And so we bypass a lot of that extra discussion because we're doing the fact finding before it comes to you to help you make an informed decision.
Prior to Mitch, Katie, we didn't have, we never employed a professional administrator. They had specific skills, but they really weren't skilled in administration. It might have been HR, could have been finance, something along that line. So you're right. We have upgraded considerably quality of people that we bring in. Evan, to your point, and I get it about meetings. I mean, my rule is if I don't bring value to or take value from a meeting, I don't go. And are you suggesting, and I'm really not interested in tying up 3 weeks a year or a month, 3 Tuesdays. But are you thinking that we could, instead of having two committee of the, let's just call it committee of the whole for the moment. Instead of having two, we just have one.
And then to the one.
And if we need an extra one, we can always schedule it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Again, it's within my philosophy.
I don't have a problem with that. I guess it just depends on what you want to call it.
I don't know if it really matters what you call it,
Yeah.
honestly.
Okay. What I want to be careful of is that we want to be moving things along so that you guys are able to do your business. And if we're only meeting to do a deep dive on a subject once a month, does that then potentially cause a delay on action being taken so that you can move the business forward?
No, because a lot of those general operating action items that you guys take, they never come to committee of the whole anyways. They come right to the board. Committee of the whole or study session or what have you, these are these bigger topics like ARPA, like opioid spending, like, those bigger topics, honestly. Your day-to-day operations don't really warrant a long discussion. They typically don't. So those things are still going to move forward at a normal pace.
I don't know, I'm gonna yield to the chair of this committee and of this committee. Whatever you want to recommend. You're chairing it, you're the leader. You're not doing anything that causes us to be out of compliance with anything, so.
You're just trying to make Evan happy.
Well, then in
I
that
don't
case-
want to try
Shouldn't
and tell-
everybody, Tim?
Right.
I don't know.
If we're just trying to make Evan happy, then I say we go to 6 meetings.
Sorry, Rhonda, you wanted to respond to that.
No, I just, I think if there's no reason to have a second committee of the whole, we come to the Board of Commissioner meeting and like we did the last meeting, have it 15 minutes later. It could have been, it was less productive than it could have been, because when you are going to have a work session or a discussion we need that break in between. If our administrator in discussions has said that it may take a burden off her plate to only have to plan for one and to be able to really schedule that with the things that are important over the course of a month, and looking at how other neighboring municipalities do it and where you did it before you came here. If that works there, I say we give it a shot.
I want to be careful about comparing us to other communities that have less meetings, because and I'm not being smug, but maybe we're doing a better job than those other communities. I think for a community our size, we run this very professionally. And
Mhm.
maybe that's the benefit of having those meetings. But I'm going to put the road commission on the spot for a moment. Bob, you have one meeting a month. Can you share with us what your structure is?
That's why we hire them. That's why you have Katie. You guys have to micromanage your job. I don't know why you have her here.
And we don't.
Doing what you're trying to do. I understand you feel like you're doing your due diligence, and I know you're much more commission. You gotta rely on that person. You gotta count on them doing what you hired them to do.
So you have 2 meetings a month, you said? What is one, are they both meetings that you take action at, or one of them's a workshop?
Our meeting, that came up if we do a roundtable. If somebody wants to discuss for 15, 20 minutes, we'll have a discussion.
Sure.
Sitting here and thinking, nobody I didn't know you guys have these kind of meetings. So you're not impressing anybody in the community.
Believe me, we're not trying to impress anybody.
Never had a loss of words.
That was never the intent.
I would like to try to go to, we'll have our next work session, committee of the whole, whatever we want to call it, at the beginning of March. And maybe end with a roundtable. I like that suggestion.
Sure.
I think we try to reduce the meetings and see how well it works.
Perfect. So Tammy and I will put together amendments to the meeting schedule and board rules that were adopted to reflect a change in one committee of the whole versus two, because specifically the calendar that we adopted says there's two. So we'll have to update that and propose those amendments for official action on March 14th.
And are we gonna do that work study in the first meeting of the month, first BOC meeting of the month, or the second?
I would say the first.
Is
And
what-
then at the end of that meeting, if we decide we need an additional meeting, we can schedule that as well, but I don't think it's going to be necessary. And I think that it will also allow administration to be more effective in the meeting that we do have to discuss things moving forward, because two weeks goes by quickly. And
And I just want to, may I ask a question? I want to ask the question, if it's going to be more of a discussion and brainstorming, do we want that on YouTube?
It's your call.
Oh, yeah, for full transparency, absolutely.
Well, we have open meeting in public, but
Yeah, but you know, the business has evolved. Now we've learned that we can use technology and people can attend remotely. And let me ask the question, what is it that we'd be discussing at a workshop that we thought we would want to control the audience?
not control. I wouldn't use that word. I would say being able to freely discuss your ideas. And sometimes I might say something that I go, oh, shoot, why did I say that?
I've done that.
Kind of thing. And, you know, it would only be for that reason.
That's not gonna stop me.
I don't want to, well, no, but I
There's
wouldn't
never
want
that.
to inhibit thought process.
It wouldn't, it doesn't inhibit me, I can tell you.
I don't think anything inhibits you, Art. No.
Yeah, my wife does, quite frankly.
Oh, God, does she?
I think, at least I've gotten comfortable, the fact that people are here in the audience. I don't even give a,
Okay,
people are watching
I
online.
just bring that up
I don't
for,
care. Doesn't affect me at all. Obviously, I say what's on my mind anyway, so.
That's about,
Okay.
that's what transparency is.
Right.
yeah, and I'm for transparency. I just said, just in case it would inhibit others.
I hope nobody's inhibited on saying what they think and what they're, because that's why we got elected.
Okay,
That's how I look at it.
Well, I don't know what you're looking for, but in order to move the conversation on, I'd make an informal motion saying that we're going to go to one workshop meeting a month, following the first BOC meeting. And additional meetings will be called as needed.
as needed.
And we're going to continue to keep it at 1:30. And we will continue to live stream it. Is that what I'm hearing?
I got to tell you, I'd like to have some flexibility. Today, we're 2.5 hours
Sure.
between meetings. That's a long haul. And, I think Evan's the one that suggested this last time. It's like, could we, in fact, it's reflected in the minutes that if we decide we want to bump up that meeting to just a 15-minute break, we're allowed to do that now.
Correct.
So with that said, are we gonna have lunch catered then on those days? On your dime?
Sure. My guy.
I have a really
I
nice
heard it.
bistro. I have a really nice bistro.
Well, I'm making a joke out of it, but still, I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes people might have to go get something to eat and stuff, and 15 minutes may not be sufficient.
That's
And
true.
I would also caution, I mean, 2.5 hours is a long break in between. But I will say last meeting when we combined them, everybody, don't take offense, but everybody was pretty slap happy at the end of that. It was a long day. And I think we were probably less productive by the end of it because a 6 to 7 hour meeting is crazy.
Mhm.
And so that break, I think, refreshes all of you and makes for a better discussion in the afternoon.
If we do have a break in between, I would suggest it be at least an hour.
Well, again, we've already gone on record that's saying we have that flexibility.
Correct.
And we didn't set a timeline to it.
Yeah.
Could be 15 minutes, could be whatever the need is for that day.
Did you make a motion to do that? Or is
Um,
that necessary?
Though I don't know. That's why I said I'm just informally.
Yeah.
No.
So I'm hearing from you that we're gonna have one committee of the whole. It'll be on the first Tuesday of the month after the first Board of Commissioners meeting. We'll call other meetings as necessary. We'll continue to live stream it. It may be at 1:30, but it could fluctuate depending on how the morning goes. And then Tammy and I will propose changes to the board rules and the meeting calendar at the next meeting for official adoption.
And it's the second Tuesday of the month.
Oh, sorry. Yes, first meeting, second
Get all
Tuesday.
that, Tammy?
And we already
Okay.
have it down there, time subject to change
Correct.
anyway, so.
Everybody satisfied?
I just want to know who prompted this conversation. Who do we blame or give credit to?
Evan,
No,
Katie and I started talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know what brought it up.
Honestly, yeah, it was just, I think we've talked about it a couple of times throughout the last year, year and a half. And we just talked about it again recently. And then I don't even remember which county administrator, it might have been Antrim County, posed the question. And so it was interesting to see how other counties are doing it.
Okay, let's move on to our ARPA discussion.
So in the packet, I provided a memo regarding ARPA. A lot of it's historical, just to refresh kind of where we left off late last winter. I've invited the road commission here to talk about some potential funding requests that they would have for ARPA dollars. I know that Commissioner Warsecki has some ideas potentially about how to spend ARPA dollars and contributing to Point Betsy. So this is where we're at. We haven't talked ARPA in a few months. We kind of took a break on it after we allocated 30% to internal needs and 30% to housing. I had touched on this morning that to date, we've only spent $120,000 on housing. 500 is in the WIMS to be sent out. And as far as internal needs, we haven't spent a ton. Maybe 15,000, and that's been specifically to court security and digitization of records here in the building. And so we need to decide how we're going to spend the rest of that money.
Katie, I think it's important though to know how much we spent, how much we already committed. And there's items that we haven't paid for yet that not in that number that you gave us, right?
So the 30% to housing, we've committed 620,000. We've spent 120.
Okay, but we've already, 620 is already committed.
620 is the number.
Yep,
Yeah.
correct. Yep. So the 500 waiting in the WIM to be
So
sent
that's
out.
620 there. And then how much for in the campus
So far for the campus, we've only spent about $15,000.
committed?
Committed, we've committed 30%, which is just over $1 million.
Okay, so let's just call it. That'd be 1.1. And then what else?
Broadband.
Broadband.
So we've committed $1.5 million for the broadband expansion project. However, you as the board have not committed 30% of ARPA to broadband. We've talked about it in conversation about a great deal of that 1.5 coming from ARPA, but you haven't actually committed those funds. You've only committed 30% to housing and 30% to internal needs. We still have 40% to commit specifically.
Okay, because the numbers you just gave me, we have committed about 3.1, 3.2 million already.
committed, but not ARPA dollar, all of it.
Well,
Correct.
okay, because some of these things are going to be funded from different sources.
10.
What I'm trying to get to is how much have we committed in ARPA dollars so far?
We've committed 60%, which is just over $2 million.
Okay. And of that, we've funded some of it and some of it is still just waiting to be funded.
Did we
Correct.
commit the money that we hired the consultant for broadband?
Not specifically from ARPA.
Okay.
So since I started this with the housing discussion, and we have committed 620 out of that 30%, then that leaves 415,000
Ish. Yep.
ish. And I mean, it's my thought that we need to reallocate that elsewhere. I mean, we had two projects that were ready, so we offered to help them with ARPA. And then, I mean, now we have the lighthouse, parks and rec, among a bunch of other things that need it. So it's my thought that we don't put any more money towards housing. We use that 400 somewhere else. And I know that they asked, what was it, for 200 and some thousand for 200? And I'm not saying we do all of it towards that, right? I'm saying we do some of it towards the lighthouse, some of it towards the parks, but I think we've done enough towards housing, and I'd like to see the rest of that 30%, that, so 400 and some thousand to go elsewhere. And I mean, I was, I'll say it, that before last week when he came and spoke about the lighthouse, I mean, part of me was, why are we funding a lighthouse? Why don't we just sell it? That was my thought, until he came and said that it actually pays for itself. And it brings that many people, what do you say, 50,000 people a year into our county. So, I mean, it's deserved that we help it, and nothing's been done to it in 160 years, I think he said. So-
165.
So we should, that presentation changed my mind on how I felt about the lighthouse, because it does fund itself, but I think we should allocate some money to help with the restoration project on the shoreline.
And one of the things he did say was, if we commit some, show in good faith that they believe others will come through, and they have some pretty firm support in that. So leveraging that.
I think historically, we thought the understanding with the take care of the lighthouse was different than what it contractually is. And we do have an obligation
True.
to contribute and help with the repair that's needed.
Since the Friends was formed, to the best of my knowledge, based on my research, they've never used any general fund dollars from the county. They've been able to pay for their own capital expansion needs. They've done a good job of managing that. In order to attract new funds, typically you'd have to be willing to put in about 10% of what they're looking for. And you'd put in 10% to get 90% all day long. I would anyway. That's an easy decision. But I want to go back to the discussion of housing. I know that you and I feel differently about that. And quite frankly, I wish that we had even more money to invest into housing. But I think where we're at is that we only have X amount of dollars. And we're trying to touch a lot of areas of need. And that means that there has to be a sacrifice made somewhere. Part of the pushback is that the monies we've committed so far looks like it only benefits Frankfurt. And, how problematic is that if there's a project maybe out in Thompsonville that's in the wings, and someone's going to be bringing that to us in the next couple of months. And we say, sorry, got to go away. We're not looking at it anymore. How do you manage? How do you process that for yourself?
I mean, I process it by how many of the houses or the amount that we've put towards housing. How many houses is that going to be? 20?
16.
16.
Yeah,
So
16.
we help out 16, as opposed to if we put money towards our parks, we help out the whole county instead of 16 people in housing. And we're here for the whole county. That's how I process it.
Other than when we did the survey, parks never came up, lighthouse never came up.
I think they were what, 5 or 6% for
Yeah.
parks?
So if you look in the memo that I
6.25%.
provided, based on the survey results, Parks and Recreation, by the numbers, was a 5.5% allocation.
Say that one more time.
So Parks and Recreation, based on the numbers, would be about a 5.5% allocation of funding is what the community committed to.
What I'd like to know is, do we have more products being presented to us requesting the housing dollar?
So we meet monthly, a housing collaborative with Housing North and various other entities, Habitat for Humanity, Frankfurt Area Community Land Trust, Frankfurt Housing. In the near future, I'm not aware of anything. There's discussions regarding potential development in Thompsonville. But there's nothing that's going to be quick enough specifically for ARPA dollars. Because that's the other thing we have to keep in mind is we have to get this money out the door the end of December of 2024, and it has to be spent by the end of 2026. And so some of these conversations that are being had, they're brand new conversations on developments. If we can't the people that we give money to have to spend this money or we have to pay it back to the federal government. So if we can't prove to the federal government that they've spent this money by the timeline, we're required to give it back.
But that makes a difference in, at least my opinion, on the percentage of allocations. I mean, if we don't have housing projects coming to us, it doesn't make sense for us to allocate funds for it. Can't use it anyway.
And there's discussion about a $2.2 million tower in Frankfurt
Which is
Which is
emergency
needed very, very-
communications.
severely.
Of which we're gonna have to, if, to be successful for a grant, probably gonna have to do some matching funds
Oh, absolutely.
too.
Did Point Betsy assure us that they could have the money spent on that timeline?
Mm-mm,
I didn't hear that either.
mm-mm.
I don't know if we.
I think they're just waiting for a go if they can get the money.
Mhm,
Yeah, part of their holdup is that they don't have the money in the,
Right.
mhm.
they're, depending on what dollar amount it costs them, they're between $2 and $4 million short.
Right, but the contribution from the county would be seed money to facilitate other private donations.
Yeah,
So the question of the timeline would still exist.
They have to spend that money by the end of December of 2026.
And let me understand, I had a slightly different understanding, and I know that you deal with these things more frequently than I do. But my understanding of it is those funds have to be in the process of being spent. And that if it trickles over to 2007, but everything is in process, nobody's gonna try to claw back that money.
I've not seen that in writing, but that's being talked about, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't trust
How much risk you can put into that.
exactly.
Don't
So
trust the
to add
government.
to this
Until I see it
conversation-
in writing that says certain things, I'm not gonna believe it, especially for money of that size. Now, if it's first spent, so Point Betsy, ours is first spent and they can prove that ours was first spent. Now they've spent that money, even though the project's not complete. Because if the project's not complete, then you're okay.
Right?
But we have to prove that our money is the one that's being spent.
Yeah, that's not hard to do.
Right.
Right, to facilitate a developed conversation, we have Bob Rosa and Matt Skills here from the Road Commission. I believe you want to discuss Henry Road regarding ARPA funds. Can I invite you to the podium?
And so I will just indicate, and it's in the memo in your packet. So based on the numbers, road repair and road maintenance, roads were number 4 based on survey results.
Before I start, I can spend money.
You're too eager.
And you're gonna tell us how much the school is putting in, right?
Well,
So, because
Amy?
Will you go ahead and, yeah.
For those who don't know, this is Amy Airforth, Superintendent of Benzie Schools.
Yeah, thank you for having me too. So we're looking at paving Henry Road, and Henry Road would be a public access road. So the school is not allowed to put school dollars or bond dollars toward public roads. We can't put anything to a public right away. So the school is spending, I think it's just over 13 million for the school parking lots, things like that, that will be attached to the new Homestead Hills Elementary. We did allow a right of way onto the school's property to move Henry Road over because currently Henry Road is a little bit too tight where it's currently at to meet the needs of the traffic study that you guys had done, as well as some of the expectations that the road commission has for road projects in the county. So I don't know if that answers that question for you
Yeah,
or
you're
not.
not putting any money in. Okay, answers it.
Well, we can't. It's not that we don't want to, we can't.
I understand the mechanics.
So, as Amy said, we have, we've been working on this a long time. I'm sure Amy's worked on it a lot more than I have. I do have a drawing here. I realize it's probably almost illegible. Folks, but that's, this is the new elementary school here. Existing high school, middle school. Track is here, soccer room. Existing Henry Road, west side of the property. Track, road. how we do. No homes on it, well, there's one home that accesses right in here, but no homes on most of them.
Yeah, yet.
There's some large pieces of property there that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, what Amy was talking about was this, approach we, lanes out and one lane in. Put that. Doesn't fit. Right away. That's on Homestead. So that nice. Right away, public road. But I think got a name something. Put on that road at some point.
Literally.
This is the new alignment, which this little square, you can see that little square right there is a the gate station for a gas line. One of the problems here. A little bit concerned about cost. Right. Alignment on the west side of the gates. I can pass this around.
Could see.
I'm good.
It's okay. Thank you.
So what we are looking for, the road, well, first of all, the road commission went ahead and we built a gravel grade on that road this past fall. And we have, right now, we have spent about $51,000 in road commission funds to gravel that, rub it out, gravel it. So it's basically ready for pavement at this point. I know you'd be looking for a approximate how much it's going to cost to pave that. And so I asked Team Elmers to give us a proposal, and they came up with about $112,000 to pave it. That's not into Amy's parking lot. That's just public road portion of that. And they formatted this as a quote. So it's not, we didn't send out for competitive bids. So I'm pretty confident that $112,000 through a competitive bid process would come down.
You know the length in it of it?
It's about 700 feet long.
Yeah.
And that's 2 courses of asphalt, 3.5 inches a piece, 3 inches total. And then we would have the contractor, whoever gets the bid, would do the final grading so that they can't come back to us and say you didn't do something right. If they final grade it and they pave it, they will do a much better job. So that's kind of what we're looking for. I think the project would certainly assist the road commission, certainly assist the school district, and Jason Bernard from Benzie Township was going to be here, but he had another commitment. So it would assist the township as well as all the people accessing the school. So I know you're not making any decisions today, but we just wanted to have a chance to talk to you about it and answer any questions you might have.
And where does it, so you're not talking about paving it all the way through?
No, sir.
You're just asking to pave it out until you can get onto the school property?
Yes, I believe. I'm not 100% sure whether we have to pave over the gas line. I think we have to pave over the gas line as a addition of each.
And if I was on Henry Street, where am I going? Where does that intersect at? What road does that intersect with?
Well, it goes up and goes, it comes north-south off Homestead and it goes up about a half a mile. It
Pinecroft?
turns west.
Doesn't it hit the Pinecroft Golf?
Yeah, and
Okay.
goes down to Eldridge Road.
When you say hits the Pinecroft,
There's a, yeah.
Pinecroft Golf
Off
Course.
of
that drive
Eldridge.
going into Pinecroft?
Yep.
So it tees into that road,
Yes,
then you come back out to Eldridge.
correct.
Oh, I see. And you said that there's property along there. And this improvement would enhance the value of that property? I mean, if you have that kind of access to it, wouldn't it enhance it?
Potentially.
Yeah, I would think so. The property owner, we've talked to a number of times. He actually asked the road commission to abandon the road, Henry Road, a number of times because he doesn't want people running through there and tearing up his property. So I don't know what his plans are in the future. Doesn't sound like he's immediately interested in development. But
So
I
is
can't
it
speak
safe
for
to
him.
assume once elementary school is open, that people are going to be using Henry Road from the north to the south to get to the school?
Probably not, because it's a 2-track and it's not in very good shape. So to come in from Eldridge and Henry from the west, I'm sure somebody will do it, but wouldn't be.
I would have done it.
I won't.
Said me too.
I won't.
That's what I would do.
I'll stick with it. Dave, throw the kid out the door, leave.
Another question for you as well. Where would the financing come from in the event that we decided that we didn't want to fund this project?
Don't know. We don't have, the road commission hasn't budgeted for this at this point. That's why I don't have any better competitive bids to tell you. I don't believe, as Amy indicated, the school district has the ability to fund that. And I don't know if the township is interested in participating either. I can't speak for them, so.
So
Nope, you go ahead.
did the school, when the bond passed, assume that this was part of the bond project? I mean, was this a surprise when you found out that the funds weren't there to pave this road for access?
So what we found is that we were using public road. People-
So it was assumed at the beginning that this would have been part of the project?
Correct. And I think initially the school was set to be built up where the soccer field is. That of course presented some challenges, being that the bus loop was going to bisect the playground, that they were going to be about 100 feet off of Homestead Road, which is a pretty busy road for an elementary school. So that plan was moved to a different location on the property.
If Henry Street wasn't available, how would you access the new building?
Well, there would have to, I guess, that's the work that we did. As problem is that the school district gave the right of way back in 19 was, and because of where the gas, it does end up impacting property, which was not something that we were aware that they were going to not allow us to cross the gas line. So that presented challenges after the project was already underway as to what we could cross and what we. And a long.
So there's no alternatives.
Yeah, I mean,
Can
the
you go up to the
other
podium?
things that we looked into were actually going to the very back.
Just want that to explain something.
Yeah.
Explain to them our upgrades on roads that are second.
Yeah, road commission policy is we don't participate in upgrading seasonal roads. Henry Road is considered a seasonal road right now. We have, I don't know off the top of my head, hundreds of miles of seasonal road, and we can't afford to upgrade them all. So we made an exception in this regard to do the graveling and prepare. It's obviously the main entrance, the only entrance to this school. So we felt it was a good thing to do. And there wasn't really any possibility, I'll say, of using the existing Henry Road just because of the entrance onto Homestead was too restricted.
Could you abandon that road and then make it available for the school to fund the paving of that?
Make it private?
We could have, it's abandonment's always a potential. We actually, the one property owner would like it abandoned, at least in the past he has. But the road commission has been reluctant to do that for future development purposes. That's one thing we run across quite often when people want to abandon these seasonal roads is once it's abandoned, it's gone, never coming back. So I think the road commissioners want to see those options stay open for access to property.
So I understand that because there was a change in plans that this issue cropped up, correct?
Could investigate some alternatives. One being coming in for the new bus garage would be behind the ball fields, coming around to have a parking or roadway, so we could avoid gas line. That's over $1 million to pave a road. Trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and what they asked for us. They wanted us to build a new school. And we already had to eliminate about 5,000 square feet from the original plan of the school to try to stay under budget, because during COVID, all of the prices were over 30 to 40% more steel and utilities costs. So we were trying to make good decisions that made the most sense, that were keeping safety of kids in mind first and foremost, and then making sure we're meeting the needs of the school district needs as well as what the taxpayers voted for.
Got a couple for you. Where you have got the school's property to move Henry. The existing spot next to that gentleman's house, folks, will that be abandoned?
No decisions have been made on that just yet. There is one house in back of the house that fronts on Homestead Road that does access
Comes in that
Henry
way.
Road.
Okay,
So that is their access to the public road system. But there's any number of things we could do. And talk to DTE and see. I think the people that own the house that fronts on Henry Road, they want to see that maintained. And if DTE would maybe maintain that right away for access to their gate station, maybe we can abandon a section of Henry Road. But it's not anything we absolutely have to do. We can operate with what we have.
I was just curious. Seeing how it's a seasonal road, Benzie Township, and I know was approached. That is actually their responsibility as a township to upgrade these roads to a certain extent. Were they willing, I guess it's skin in the game type thing, were they willing to kick anything in? And I know some of the commitments kind of, oh yeah, we'll do it. That doesn't happen, but I think Benzie Township needs to have a little skin in it. That's where I'm going with this. I just want to know, I think they were approached, but I'm not positive.
They were approached. They haven't given us necessarily an answer. I think they are waiting to see how things kind of shake out. And again, I talked to Jason before I came to this meeting, and he was apologetic. He was thinking it was the morning portion of the meeting as opposed to the afternoon portion of the meeting. So he did say that he is supportive of the project. Is that monetarily supportive or in spirit? I don't know. So,
Because you guys have matching funds that the township have.
correct.
And which would require a 50% match from them.
Correct.
So there is a way to extend a little of this, maybe. I'm just throwing stuff out there. And the last thing I wanted to ask was, if the bus garage is going to be built, are we going to be asked down the road to extend Henry Road? Or is this going to cover where the bus garage could possibly be put?
The bus garage is actually going to be located off to the of the property closest, but would access our driveways.
Would access from the high school and or from that?
Yes. There would be a need.
Okay, I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one, please. Has there been a thought of abandoning this idea? I'm not saying abandon Henry Road, but move the access over in towards the high school a little bit, but not impeding on soccer field or anything like that. Rather than even mess with Henry Road, put a driveway in 50 feet to the east of that and its own driveway on its own property.
That is all school property, correct?
Hmm?
You would be
Oh, back up towards Henry Road. Yes, right. You got it, Amy.
Yes, so, we did look at all of those options. Originally, I think there was an, option that was over just a little bit.
Yep.
It was right here, straight back. It does impact, the fields that are there. So that was one of the concerns. There was also concern about traffic and, elementary dismisses at 4, which would be when those fields would be in use.
Practice soccer and football practice fields.
Yeah, so this plan, actually, you can't tell from here, but they were able to move the road over into a tree line. So there is a buffer, for protection between the field.
Oh, Katie, you can pull up a satellite view of the high school and you can actually see what sheet you're talking about.
I can.
That's what I'm looking at.
There's a computer guy.
Exactly right. That's on my computer.
That's why we hired the administrator though, right?
So the original plan was for the elementary to go up to where the soccer fields are currently at.
Mhm.
I think the elementary is where it used to be, but I don't.
I don't know. That's my understanding why there was a change in the. I'm still trying to figure out why there was a change in the original plan that made it so you had to make a drastic change in how the approach was.
The original, are you talking about the very original where it was supposed to be that right off the road?
That's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
So that original plan was changed because it ended up being about 100 feet off of the road. And the way that that was originally drawn, they actually had the bus loop going through the playground. So buses would essentially be going through where kids were going to be playing. And obviously that design was done before I joined the team. But I asked some questions about, why was that a decision with 150 acres? Why were we looking to do that? We already have a school with a bisected
Hold on.
playground.
I want YouTube to see it too. All right. You wanna
Yeah,
confirm?
this map has, you can see we've got the, land is clear and the trees that,
It's the work you guys have already done, right?
And how far down then would you,
we would pave from the intersection of Homestead up and then back to Henry, probably in this area. And beyond there would be, Main as a 2-track diesel road.
That help?
Yeah.
yeah, it does.
See. Very nice.
I certainly could see where the problem would be, having it too close to a playground.
And this school originally, which you're much taller than me, but you can see the soccer field, that is about where the school would be housed. You just back a tidge and then the parking lot was in front there.
That
So,
was the original.
correct. And then the bus loop was going to go somewhere in there, where the football barn is, the bus garage loop, or not garage loop. Well, actually, originally the bus garage was going to be there too. And the loop to the bus garage was going to go the 2 playgrounds, and then that was going to be where the buses. Actually,
That, how did the traffic study, were you gonna add a lane there coming in or
It did not, it's close, but
close?
what Gary's talking about is we're looking at a traffic study to determine if a turn lane would be required for all the turning movements going into the school property. And close, but it's not there.
Required?
So maybe in the next 10, 15 years, maybe, but at this point, no.
So in your conversations with the township supervisor, do you get the understanding that he intends to contribute towards this, or have you not talked? I mean, I understand you don't have a specific number, but do you get the sense that he's gonna ante up anything?
I don't honestly know.
So Jason Bernard has indicated that they have a couple of roads ahead of Henry Road at the moment that are needing funding, but once those roads are finished, they would most likely assist monetarily.
What does that mean?
I'm just,
What year?
so it's not out of the question, but it sounds like, you know, they have a plan of which roads to provide funding for, and this one is down the list a couple.
This is gonna be done.
Well, we'd like to
Not
have
too
it done
long.
before school opens.
Right.
But let's say that the township agreed to participate, but they can't participate now. We just carry it as a receivable. Let's say they're gonna put in $50,000, carry the 50,000 as a receivable, an agreed upon date.
Well, and the road commission has the matching funds for the township, so that should almost cover it.
We're at 100.
I don't know how big their matching fund is,
So we're
I don't
spending
know. I
Jason's
don't
money
have-
for
I
him,
didn't
that's
bring
fine.
that with me. I apologize.
which is no big deal, and they may have already used it. I don't know either. So,
Well, I think they're probably planning on using it on those other roads higher on the list, but
I'm just saying that if we agreed to do this, townships participating, there's a way mechanically that we can get. Okay,
yeah, we've done that before.
so same difference, yeah.
Well, I, want to make sure that the school project goes forward and the kids are safe, first and foremost.
Any other questions?
112, right?
We have the answers here. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Let's continue in the parentheses on our topics for discussion. We have childcare on there too. Did you have anything specific to add to the ARPA conversation regarding childcare?
Nope, I just wanted it to be part of the general discussion, because that was number 2, actually, on the list. And we had heard from, the nice lady out in Thompsonville, Ashley, right?
I think so.
Ashley, I'm sorry, I forgot her name. So we heard from
Thank
her. We've also, I've had conversations with Josh at Grow Benzie and the Human Services Collaborative, and they're working on maybe some creative ideas to assist with the childcare problem in Benzie County. And so I wanted to make sure it was part of the conversation of giving funding to childcare, or maybe not.
Just to add to the conversation, the EDC was approached by a private citizen about his interest in possibly building, but again, that's a private entity. I don't think we can allocate our ARPA dollars to an individual or a private endeavor like that, right? There are rules about that. It's to be set up in a particular way before it can be fundable.
Yeah, the business in Thompsonville, when she presented to us, I could pull my notes out, but I asked her what she wanted funded. She had 4 different objectives.
Mhm.
None of them, in my opinion, fit the box. Like one was to pay off my mortgage. Well, I can't do that because it enriches you to do that.
Mhm.
And then there was 3 others. One of them was food, which there's agencies that will provide you with food. But we just weren't finding something that would fit in the box, so to speak. But I don't think we should overlook child care. I know it's like the housing, nobody's coming forward to us and making a specific demand, but we went to the community. We said, what is it that you want? That was one of the top 3, just because is number 2. So just because we don't have anything in front of us now, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be allocating money towards it.
Our issue is the spending
Timing.
constraints and time. So I worry about that because we need to have this committed. A year is not going to take long to get here.
Well, when it comes to that, that's, something like that can be put together in months. once somebody has a business plan and they're moving forward with it, it's not like there's delay after delay. It should be able to be put together fairly quickly. And that's why, now, I agree with you, when, if it's suddenly June of 24 and nothing's happening, then we come back to the table here and say, okay, how do we want to reallocate that money? But I think that we need to leave some aside right now for it.
And I know that the Human Services Collaborative, they're continuously talking about childcare and ways to impact childcare in Benzie County. And I know Josh would like to come to the Board of Commissioners meeting to talk about creative ways to utilize some of that funding for childcare. And so if we're going to allocate, a percentage, whatever it may be, I know Josh would come with creative solutions.
Because right now you've got, what, 515,000?
Nope. So the table,
allocated or no?
no, the table that's in your packet, that is strictly based on the survey. So based on the survey responses and how many responses we have, this is what those responses are by the numbers. So if you were just taking the survey at face value, that's the percentages. What we've allocated is 30% internal and 30% housing right now.
That makes that number.
And so-
quite a bit different than-
We need to talk about broadband. Are we gonna indicate 30% to broadband or 20% or what have you? And then there's, even if you do 30%, there's still 10% left to allocate.
I think at the end of the day, there were some counties who said we have our ARPA money, we're going to give it all to broadband.
Yep.
That happened. For me, for my vote, for my position in the community, I mean, at the end of the day, if our punch card covers the things on my list and we say we were entrusted with this ARPA money, taxpayer dollars, what did you do with it? And my response can be, we made campus improvements that were needed. We impacted broadband. We impacted housing. We contributed to the school and the road commission through Henry Road. We impacted Parks and Rec and public safety with a contribution to the tower. I feel like I've done good work. I feel like it was used responsibly. It was fiscally really well thought out. I'm comfortable with that punch card. And that's where I'm at. How that is proportionally, I mean, we know some of the proportions. There's going to be a little bit left over, I think, where if a childcare proposition came up, we could assist with that too, or at least have seed money. But I feel like we're headed in the right direction.
I wonder how everybody else feels about the housing thing, because if people aren't, I'll quit bringing it up. But
I
it's just-
agree.
I
I
was
mean,
curious
I'm
how everybody else
comfortable.
feels about it.
With what we've done.
You know what you're saying? Done some for housing. Let's move on from housing, see where else we can put money at, get these projects moving, get them going.
Well, we were told earlier today that an acceptable contribution to the lighthouse would be 250,000 in allocation. That's what I
That
heard.
was what their
Their
resolution was.
Right.
They were,
So I have a spreadsheet pulled up. And so 500,000 is committed to Homestretch, 120,000 has already been paid to the Frankfurt Area Community Land Trust, 30% to capital items, which is 1,035,000 change. If you commit 30% to broadband, which is also 1,035,000 change, and say 250 to Point Betsy, you still have 510,000 left over to commit.
which leaves room for
Henry Road.
Henry Road's
Road,
112.
The $80,000 Parks and Rec asked for, and seed money for a tower. That, I mean, we know we're not gonna be able to fund $2.2 million tower. And we're gonna need the federal or state assistance with that, but we would have room for seed money. We have skin in the game.
I suspect that we probably will get some help with the tower funding.
I hope so.
That 1.5 million for broadband.
Mhm.
Now, we were going to try to access money from other sources also.
Mhm.
So we don't necessarily going to take 1.5 million from ARPA funds for it, right?
Right, 30% would be 1,035,000.
And that, is that the number you're using?
Mhm.
Okay.
And so to make up the rest of the 1.5 million, Shelley and I had talked about this a while ago. But to make up the difference, there's still some CARES Act money left over that we could tap into. There's potential of DTRF money we could tap into, as well as our general fund balance is projected to be higher than our policy says we shall strive as a minimum. So there's money there we could tap into as well to make up the 1.5. And there's still marijuana funds that we haven't finished allocating. There's an administration fee that we haven't finished allocating. There's other funding sources that we could canoodle around to come up with the 1.5.
Also, ARPA money is currently in
Is it in Michigan class?
part of it is.
Part of it, yeah.
Part of it was previously invested and
That's close to 5% right now, isn't it? Earning interest, 4.8.
Yeah, so we've earned quite a bit of interest on that. We just got $50,000 from the LATCF, that additional federal funding. So there are other buckets that we have to make that up. So 250 to Point Betsy, 112 for Henry Road. What was that other one that you said?
Parks and Rec.
Parks.
Parks and Rec requested 80,000 for the outlet project. And when you say Henry Road, to me, on my punch card, that's gonna check off the school and the road commission.
Okay, so Henry Road.
But I don't think we should commit the whole 112.
No, I think the township has to be in,
There's got to be something there.
right?
So
Whether it's a commitment, as Commissioner Jeanette has said, that's paid back down the road, that's fine that they have a priority list. But the responsibility that we're assisting with to get this done before school starts.
And road commission has already indicated that they'd be
Right.
willing to carry the receivable. So let's let them do that. But I wouldn't want to load in the full amount for that road either.
I was just gonna say, what are you thinking?
Well, I can tell you this, and we've been saying this consistently. We want to take that 3.5 million and we want to make it look like 9 million
Mhm.
from all of the matching funds. So we would use that same practice for Henry Street. And, we can go in saying that we'll do half. And then the other half has to come from whatever source they can find.
Might be a
It's a starting place.
might be a split.
56,000?
It might be a split of the township and then road commission matching the township, because they have funds to do that.
So does 56 sound like a comfortable number? 56,000?
But having, Rhonda, the way that you presented it, I kind of in your camp. It's like, we checked all the boxes off and we took 3.5 million and we made it worth over 7 anyway. And I don't know how much more we can do.
And impacted a variety of areas in our community.
We tried to reach every member of our community to benefit from those funds. And as much as I would like to see us continue housing, maybe we just don't have enough money to do everything we want to do.
Maybe we don't have the project for housing.
Well, and that could, because unlike the other things we're talking about, housing is 2 years out. If someone comes to you today and says, I got a housing project, yeah, we won't see anything for 2 years. Generally, that's how it works.
So 56,000 for the school road commission, 80,000 for Crystal Lake outlet, 250,000 for Point Betsy, keeping the 30% for broadband. That still leaves a difference of 374,000 and some change that could be utilized for a tower.
Yeah, because that'd be the matching. There you go.
You're not smiling.
Why aren't you smiling?
She wasn't paying attention.
In my conversation with Lake Township, by the way, Lake Township is willing to either do something with Point Betsy or do something with the tower. And I think, quite frankly, we could carry some weight there. I think they'd ask us, what is it that our money's going to be best used for? Now, that's not a bunch of money, but I think it's still $80-some thousand.
And I think with each of these allocations that we're talking about, especially with Parks and Rec and with the Point Betsy, we have to make sure we're in the range of time
Mhm.
needed. I mean, I don't know what kind of momentum the carry and boat launch has at the outlet right now, and if that can be done in that time frame. If not, perhaps it can be allocated when the feasibility study comes in for the improvements they want to make there. I don't know, but again, in my mind, it's less buckets now and it's a punch card
Mhm.
of what did you do with it? What did you impact?
And that boat launcher, you're talking about railroad.
Well, it is, the outlet has been combined with the Cole property to become a part of Railroad
Crystal
Point
Lake.
now. Right,
Oh, that is
right.
Where they're talking.
But there was a request to improve that parking at Railroad Point. Is that what we're talking about?
This would be the Crystal Lake.
This would be
the
Crystal
outlet.
Lake, I think
Yeah.
is the parking they were
Mhm.
talking about. Wasn't it,
I
Evan?
believe so.
I think it's a project, the carry and boat launch the parking was encompassed in that project. That whole area was reworked.
I don't care.
And I like the fact that we
Nothing.
have 300,000 or so left, so that we can contemplate other things as we're going down the road. Because it's only February.
Mhm.
Good conversation. Does anybody have anything else to add before we move on?
Did childcare
Yeah,
fall off the list?
That's what
I don't think childcare did fall off the list.
We have money left over and we're waiting for
Right.
requests to come in.
And especially when you talk about broadband, not knowing what sources that money was that could free up funds for childcare should something be presented that's feasible. I mean, if the 30% for broadband doesn't all have to come from ARPA money, that to me frees up money for childcare should we have the option to spend it there.
Well, 30% is only 1,035,000.
Right.
We still have to come up with the other almost
Gotcha.
400,000. So that's where the other things come in.
Okay.
And I know Crystal Lake has committed their funding to broadband, but I believe that would be in addition to the 1.5 to expand further into Benzie County.
And, and I'm also going to add that in the time that we started this conversation,
Build the 911 center.
No, that would be Tower.
That is the tower.
Yeah.
in the time we've talked about the child care center, I mean, the Methodist Church in Frankfurt has opened a child care. Commissioner Cunningham has made me aware of, didn't you say there was another private childcare that had
Mhm.
opened up?
I just heard of
You're
that
aware
one.
of the one in Thompsonville. I mean, perhaps this isn't something that the county is going to need to participate in. Perhaps it's, the need is taking care of itself in other ways. And that's a possibility too.
Probably where it can be the biggest benefit is working with Lansing and trying to reduce some of the regulations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Move on. Thank you for being so patient. We are now going to get to our opioid funding, including body scanner. And I read that without my glasses on. There we go.
Using opioid funding for body scanner.
So,
Opioid funding potentially for the body scan.
yeah, so this isn't
And
the
other-
only part of the conversation, but because we have proposals for a body scanner, I put it with there. So, Benzie County joined the opioid class action. We're receiving settlement funds. As a result of that, we've received about $100,000. The board asked that I sit down and brainstorm with staff to talk about how could we spend this money within the limitations of what's set forth in the settlement agreement. So I sat down with various staff folks, a few folks from the sheriff's office, the prosecutor's office, animal control, emergency medical services. We sat down and we really put our heads together to think, how could we utilize some of these funds? And so I provided you a bit of a lengthy memo that was the result of that brainstorming session. One of the top items was educational materials for the community and for the schools. And one of those components would be to create pamphlets as well as a video. And I've asked Ray Antel to be here today because he's very eager to assist us in producing some sort of educational video to put out to the community. He's been in contact with Fair State University, who potentially would fund a video for us for Benzie County. So that's why I've invited him here. But some of the other things that we talked about were funding additional drug court positions. As you know, we have a drug court that is grant funded by the state of Michigan. They lowered the funding on that. So we only have four to five participants in that program. We felt that logically we could expand that program another 2 to 3 participants. So that would be maybe $15,000 of funding we could put towards that program. A body scanner. So the This would be for folks coming in to the jail, and they would walk through a body scanner, and it would tell our employees just what might be there. And so Lieutenant Smith and I sat down with Bethany to talk about their body scanner. They have the best price body scanner, and it's a pretty cool scanner. I know that some people want to walk their dogs through it.
One
But
in
this,
particular.
this body scanner would really help us in our operations up at the jail. Folks coming into correctional facilities, it's just so many unknowns. If they ingest that, then we have an overdose in the jail. Now we have a whole nother issue going on with liability purposes. The MMRMA is committed to providing a grant, and the grant would fund up to $43,000 of the body scanner. The body scanner is about $125,000. So they would fund 43,000 of that. They're also willing to finance or lease the remainder of that. And in the meantime, we thought we'd apply for a 2% tribal grant to help fund some more of that if the opioid dollars don't cover the difference.
And we're certain at this point that that expense is allowable for the opioid money?
It's my understanding from Bethany that other jurisdictions are using the opioid settlement funds as well towards body scanners in their jurisdictions.
Have you run the numbers on it to see if it better off sit by it?
That was what I was leaning towards as a lease option.
Because the technology changes so quickly that it
Correct.
allow you to upgrade.
Yes.
So then we wouldn't be talking about needing something like $80,000. Wouldn't need that then. would we?
Yeah, it's about 17,000 a year for a lease.
Okay.
16, sorry. Mhm.
What you have here. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what the advantage would be to buy it. Didn't make a lot of sense to, but
$17,000 a year for police. Is there a startup cost to put it in place to begin with?
So no, the $125,000 price tag, if committed by the end of March, that involves the installation, the training of the staff, all of that is part of that price tag. So they would,
The lease.
the lease, that cost encompasses all those same things, installation and training.
$17,000 a year.
just
That's
cheaper to
after
buy
you
it.
take off the MMRMA grant off the top. So the lease is based on what's left after a grant. The MMRMA grant, we're understanding, is a give me grant. So it's not competitive. And so we're banking on that grant. We've been assured that grant's there.
That's what the $45,000 grant.
Yes. So the lease payments are based off of the remainder after the grant is received.
And is there a term limit or term that you have to agree to?
7 years.
So there, I don't mess with some questions here, but does that lease then cover all the maintenance cost of it too? And if there's any problems with it? Because
That's my understanding, is it's part of that service package.
We own it then at the end of 7 years?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a zero residual.
Yeah. So it'd be our machine.
Do we, does the jail operating funds enough to be able to?
So that is why they want opioid funding, because that funding is over the next 18-ish years. And so that's why it was part of this discussion, is opioid dollars could cover those lease payments, or at least a portion of them. That's why it was part of the overall discussion.
So they'd want us 17,000 of the opioid funds received,
Mhm.
assuming that we consistently get some every year.
Yes,
We'd want 7,000 of it.
yes, correct.
how much have we gotten so far?
100-ish.
And are we going to be getting that every year or?
No, so the funding that comes in, it fluctuates each year because, so there's a master settlement agreement, and then there's all these other subsidiary agreements on top of that. And those agreements are specific in how they can be repaid. So a company can lump sum pay their settlement, or they can pay it over a period of years. They can pay in advance. And so that determines how much we're getting. We received more this year because, one, we received 2 years worth of payments, and two, one of the smaller subsidiary settlements prepaid their entire settlement. So we received that whole thing. We're not going to receive it after that. But these larger ones like Janssen and Janssen, they have such a large settlement, they're anticipated to pay annually.
have a forecast what that's gonna be?
No, because at the next meeting, I'm going to be asking you to join another class action that's also part of opioid. And that settlement then will add on to how much we're receiving in this settlement.
So then
It could change every year.
we have an idea what the bare minimum is gonna be. What I'm getting at, are we gonna be able to fund this going forward with the opioid settlement now?
Yes.
But we'll get at least 17,000.
Oh, yeah.
a year.
But we'll be getting more from maybe other projects they may come on.
Yes. So
A second body scanner.
Well, as they're continuing to settle other smaller distributors and whatnot, that also affects how much we're receiving. And so now they've settled Janssen and Janssen, McKesson and Cardinal. Now they're going after the smaller ones like CVS and Walgreens and those other ones.
The next question would be is, do we have any other projects or suggestions that we should be using these dollars?
So that's part of this discussion and in my memo.
Sorry.
Just,
So,
go ahead.
nope, I was going to go to the memo. So
Yeah, just to stay on this piece of it right here. Greg, for those of us that are novice, do most jails use a scanner?
To date, about 10 jails in the county have a total
In the
body
state.
scanner.
In the
In the
county.
state?
in the state.
And yes, in the
Okay.
state.
And so in the way I'm envisioning this is, as you're bringing in an inmate, that's when you're using the scanner, correct?
That is correct. As soon
And
as
so
they're
you
being
could tell
booked
if
into
they had
the
swallowed
jail.
a balloon or something and
Yes.
be able to see all of that.
So over the last 5 years, we've had 18 incidents where narcotics were smuggled into the jail.
That you're aware of.
That I'm aware of. Yes, absolutely. Out of those 18 incidents, Narcan had to be used 4 times to revive these, the folks that had either ingested the narcotics or the balloon had broke, so to speak. And when you consider the civil liability of that, that's within our jail. And if we can prevent that and more so the human factor, we can save lives by finding it in the live scan, especially if they've been either inserted or ingested. If they're inserted, that's a very easy fix and it's a medical treatment and we bring them to the hospital and get it taken. If they're ingested, that's a much more invasive procedure, but it's a life-saving procedure and they will remove that item at the hospital under medical environment. We're not removing those items within the jail. No.
So we got 83 counties in the state of Michigan, I guess. And only 10 of them are using this?
My rough guess is 10, and that's from what, a year ago. Ingham County now has 3. They just purchased a 3rd. Several counties in the UP, a lot of people are using these dollars to do that, or committing these dollars to do that. So I know there's at least from this company 6 more pending. And from another company, I think there's probably another half dozen. So everybody's moving that direction. We're just trying to get in the beginning of that direction.
They're very, very expensive. This company is actually one of the cheaper ones. Some of them are upwards of almost $200,000 for the device.
You wanted to talk about another subject?
So there's one other thing too. There's a new drug or combination of drugs that's coming out now that is resistant to Narcan as well. So if we can keep stuff like that out, because Narcan won't stop it. If somebody's ODing from that in the jail, they're gonna be gone. And then there's that liability
That we have to
too.
pay.
So
Katie, you invited Mr. Antel here. Could we invite him up to the podium to hear what he has to say about the video?
Yes. Yeah. So
Touch on that next.
part of my memo is to talk about the educational material. So the brainstorm session, the staff that we sat down, we felt that was one of the most important things that we could do with these dollars is to create and provide educational materials to not only the schools and those in the jail, but people in the community. What are the side effects of Narcan and those sorts of things. And so Mr. Antel would like to be involved in this process, and he's been very gracious in talking with myself as well as the undersheriff about ways that he could be part of this process of creating some of this educational material. Mr. Antel is very educated in the pharmaceutical world, and so he can speak this lingo a lot better than I can. And so if you want to come to the podium, Well, the trouble is then the people online can't hear very well. Yes, please. And so he's been reaching out to Fair State University School of Pharmacy to assist us in putting together some educational material, utilizing some of these funds. And so I'll let you touch on that piece of it.
All right, thank you. I saw in the paper, the editorial in the Traverse City Record Eagle about the efforts that you people in all the other counties of Michigan are going to be involved with, as well as the rest of the country, on the opioid crisis in the United States. And I have 60 years of experience as a hospital pharmacist, retail pharmacist, long-term care facility pharmacist, as well as a teacher in public schools, teaching chemistry, physics, and biology. I also have a master's degree in guidance and counseling. So the areas that need to be covered, I have that background. So I contacted Kate and we sat down last week and discussed how I might be able to assist you on a volunteer basis. So my impression, I talked to a couple of departments for the county, and I talked to one of the school superintendents. And so my position, I think, is to best serve the community from the educational standpoint. And I feel over the years of experience that I have that the best way to do that is with visual presentation. And I think it has to be done in such a manner that is relatively easy to digest and retain. So consequently, I wanted to spend just a few minutes with you today to give you an overview as far as what my thoughts are and to see if in fact that sounds reasonable to you. So working with Kate, that's my sense of direction. I do have a contact down at the Ferris School of Pharmacy. His name is Dean Stephen Dirtz. He's the dean of the School of Pharmacy. And I've worked with him on several different occasions, and he thought that what I was suggesting was a good idea, and the faculty down there will work with that concept in developing a video presentation, which I think would be a real benefit for us here in our county, not only for the schools, but also for the various departments that we have and the agencies that work within the county and their efforts in helping work on this program. The program being the crisis, the opioid crisis. So I thought what I would do is just give you a little bit of a presentation from my perspective, because all of you are representing the citizens in our community. So if what I can give you will give you that assist, then that's exactly what I want to accomplish. Now, this is about the most insidious thing that could have ever been perpetrated upon the citizens of the United States. A drug company, a major drug company, developed a synthetic or semi-synthetic opioid. Now, opioids are a broad class of chemicals, drugs, that primary function is to stop pain. A panacea that we need in our society. Everybody here has experienced pain of one sort or another. For the most part, simplistic things like Tylenol, which is acetaminophen, can take care of that issue. But in more serious circumstances, we need something that has more potency to it. And the opioids are a major part of that. When you hear the word opioid, it sounds like opium, which in fact is the root of the use of these products. Once a pharmaceutical industry gets a product like opium, they can analyze it, they can produce that chemical, that structured chemical, synthetically. And that's the crux of this situation that we're faced with at this point in time. Because when that company made that product, that synthetic product, and I'll give you an idea, just a brief one, a structural formula. all of us probably had access to Tinker Toys, if you remember those things. And they had all those little holes and they had all the little dowels that you stuck into them. Well, when you made one of those things, that's a structural formula. So that's what the pharmaceutical companies can do. They can analyze a structural formula and they can modify it. What they came out with is a brand new product, the OxyContins. And they told the medical industry that this is going to take care of the pain, but it's not going to produce addiction. And they supposedly had the clinical background information to verify that. So that was picked up by all the prescribers across the United States who use these products with the understanding that they wouldn't produce addiction. Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And so what we had happen is all kinds of people coming down with addiction problems because of those prescriptions. Once that became evident to the prescribers, they stopped that practice. Those products are still being used, but I guarantee you this, extremely conservative. Instead of going with a week's supply, 2 weeks supply, a month's supply, they're now cut down to 3 days. Because by the time you get past 5 days of that usage, there's a potential for addiction. Now, the question is, how can somebody get addicted to these products? And that's what I want to share with you in just a couple of minutes. First of all, and we've all gone through this, if I take a Tylenol, how in the devil does that thing know where to go? So how does it work? Well, as far as our neuronal systems are concerned, they operate two methods. One is electrical, the second one is chemical. Both of those things together carry a message from a cut toe to your brain that lets your brain know, and it's the only thing that decides that I've got something wrong with my toe. If you severed the nerve between your toe and your brain, you would never know your toe was injured. So the way these drugs work is this. In your brain, there are all kinds of different centers where information provided by our senses is taken. That information is conveyed from whatever part of the body, whether it's your tongue, your nose, or whatever else it happens to be. So there are specific chemicals in our systems that transmit that information via the nerve endings. Unlike an electrical wire that's continuous, our nerves come in segments. And those segments are adjacent to one another. And the information from wherever the origin is to the brain has to go past a little junction called a synaptic junction. And that's where the chemical comes in. The chemical relays the information from one nerve fiber to the next, and it progresses up to the brain. So here we are in the brain. The the opioids convey their message, which is to block pain. So at one of those transmission points, those synaptic junctions, the information from my cut toe is heading to the brain, and my brain is going to yell out because it hurts. The opioid blocks that chemical transmission. It's kind of sort of like this. My two fists represent two nerve endings. There's a gap in between. That's called a cleft. And that together is called a synaptic junction. The information is coming from here, being transported across here. That little gap in between, I'll use this as kind of a metaphor. There's like little boats. Those are my neurotransmitters. And they go across to the other nerve fiber where there's like a marina. And that marina is set up to accept that little boat. That boat has a specific shape, a structure like our Tinker Toys. The marina has dockage which conforms to that shape and only that shape. Once that little boat goes across, the message is conveyed. So opioids block that marina dock. If the message can't get through, do we have any pain? No, because there's no transmission to the part of the brain that registers pain. That's how they work. That's terrific. Except these opioids have three components. The second component is that structure not only will block the pain transmission, but it goes to another part of the brain. And that part of the brain is the pleasure sensor. So now all of a sudden, that opioid is activating the pleasure sensor of the brain. You like chocolate bars, beautiful sunset, good music, a good relationship with somebody? That's in the pleasure sensor of your brain. And the activator is called a neurotransmitter called dopamine. The opioid releases dopamine in your pleasure sensor. Only an unbelievable amount of dopamine is released. So you're sitting there with the greatest rush you ever had in your life. That's what these people are experiencing when they use these products. And so all of us, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if I get a piece of chocolate, I want another one. Well, guess what? If these people are experiencing a major rush, give me another one of those tablets, because I'm sitting here looking for it, because that's going to be what I want. And they continue to do it. But there's a little break in the brain. And it says, listen, Charlie, you're getting too much of that stuff. I'm going to slow you down. That's called tolerance. Tolerance is where that drug doesn't produce the same effect that it did. But as a consumer, the guy taking the pill, he says, I want to have that same feeling again. So therefore, if one worked before, but it's not giving me the same effect, what am I going to do? Take two. Take them more frequently than I should. That's the beginnings of the addictive process. Now, this poor person has run out of their medication. Go to the doctor says, that's it, no more. Then that person starts looking for other sources of that same med. If that's not available from whomever the drug dealer is, they'll switch to something else. Try heroin. It'll give you the rush. It's also 50 times stronger than morphine. Now we've got this poor person in a bad state of affairs. The only thing they're interested in isn't their family, isn't their job, isn't the law. It's getting that rush. So that's where our addiction is. And that's the problem that we face. If they go through heroin and now they need something else that's even stronger to get the rush, they go to fentanyl. That's 100 times stronger than the original morphine. So this is the issue. That's part of the crisis, but that's not the biggest part. Here's the biggest part, and this is where the crisis is. As they take these medications, there's a third place where the opioids work, and that's on a primitive part of our brain that controls breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. It causes them to drop. So now if we've got this person taking large amounts of these opioids, what's going to happen to their heart rate? It's dropping. What's going to happen to their breathing? It's dropping. What's going to happen to their blood pressure? It's dropping. And we all know that if that occurs, our law enforcement is called in and they may find somebody on the floor because that person's in a state of dying. In this country, we're losing 80,000 people a year. That's our crisis. And these poor guys in law enforcement have to deal with that and have to have a body scanner. So these people, when they're picked up, aren't bringing stuff in to the jail in their body cavities. That's how bad it is. So what I'd like to do, working with Kate, is develop a video. And the reason for going to the School of Pharmacy is because I want to have this as up to date as we possibly can have, so that it's not only going to serve this year, but years to come. And I think it would be of a quality that it wouldn't only serve Benzie County, but other counties in our area as well and beyond. So that's what I'm proposing, working with Kate. And as far as this is concerned, I think once we get a good product, it would be usable through all the departments in our county. It would be usable in our schools, in our law enforcement programs, in our drug court. And it would be good information that people can digest. A lot of it, because of what I've just discussed, would be animation, which I think can be done very, very well. And I perused a lot of things on the internet, and I guarantee you, even though they're coming from good sources, they're fraught with errors. So we want to have a good product. So anyways, that's where I'm standing, and Kate gave me the opportunity to come in. Any questions that I can help you with?
Ray, good to see you again, by the way.
Thank you.
Ray lives just down the street from me. The explanation you gave us is really, I mean, a lot of detail, very high level, intricate information. Are you thinking, who are you customizing this communication to? K through 6, 7 through 9? Who are you trying to reach in that video?
Well, I think if you look at a newspaper, and everybody here probably recognizes that newspapers are written at about the 6th grade level. And that's not to mean anybody or any circumstances, but my feeling is that it's got to be palatable, otherwise it's valueless. And I agree with you. So I think in working with the School of Pharmacy, that would certainly be at the top of the questions. And I think that would be forthcoming. I don't want to make that decision, but I think when I say that it's got to be up to date, that animation can be up to date and still have, a palatable comprehension level.
And I'm left with the impression that you're not talking about cutting one video, but copying it so it can be distributed to multiple schools.
Again, I think that would be dependent on what a committee would come up with. And I think you guys would be significant as far as making those final decisions. But my feeling is this: I think a good product could be produced that would have merit for all audiences. And it's kind of like with what you're saying, and what I've been thinking about is having a study guide for those upper level areas that want to have more information, but yet have a presentation that's comprehensible by your audience. Otherwise, it's valueless.
And I appreciate the confidence, but quite frankly, I'm not qualified to determine how you would develop something like that for a specific audience. I think we need educators.
Right.
And people in the social sociology that would
be
able to determine that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And I was a high school educator for 41 years, so I've been with kids a long time. So I understand exactly what you're saying.
And just so everybody knows, you're at Frankfurt, weren't you?
Yep.
I would like to say something, and just to jog people's memories, and maybe not everyone can relate to this, but listening to your visual impact and through video, there was whenever it was about a deterrent for drugs. The scene was cracking an egg open And then it says, this is drugs, cracking an egg.
This is your
or
brain.
This is your brain on drugs, and the frying pan and spattering. That simple ad that was on television way back when had such impact. And it was very, very simple. So that's what I'm saying. If you can have something that is that universal, which that is, from a little kid looking at it to an older person. This is your
Right,
brain on drugs. So
understand
I think you
exactly-
can do it.
Yes,
You
I
can do
understand what
it.
you're saying. And, you know, the point of the matter is, and this is what really is irritating. You know, in the lawsuit that generated the monies for, you know, our efforts here, you know, it was like $21 billion or $23 billion that was distributed, will be distributed across the country. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, that's blood money.
Yeah.
A lot of people lost their lives. And let me throw this out to you. I don't know if you are aware of or have been watching the newspapers. The drug cartels in Mexico are building factories to make fentanyl that's going to wind up in this country. I mean, we have a crisis because of the people who currently are addicted. But I'll tell you, if there's an opportunity to make big money, there are a lot of people that are ready to cash in. So I think under the circumstances, you know, whatever the end product for a visual is, whether there's multiple or whether there's just a couple, I think what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that the message it conveys is as simplistic as we can make it, but conveys the understanding of what these drugs can do. I guarantee you this, and our sheriff might be able to back me up on this, that I'm putting in a spot. But here's the thing. Those drugs enslave the brain. They enslave it. When a person is willing to give up anything to get the next dose, including stuffing drugs into their body cavities, that's about as bad as it can get. So, you know, and the kids in schools are smart. They really are smart. And one of the first things any teacher should learn is that the kids going through your classroom could very well be a lot smarter than you are. Just give them an opportunity for education and experience. So my feeling is it's got to be good. It's really got to be good, but understandable, comprehensible.
So based on your expertise in working with Ferris State, what do you think the bottom line is to make your vision a reality cost-wise? What would that take to make this video, the production that you're talking about? Do you know what kind of dollar amount would be on that to create a quality product?
Yeah, let me share this with you. I talked to Ferris, I talked to the dean, and I know they have some monies. They picked up a grant through Osceola County and Newaygo County. And Ferris also has the capacity to make videos or visuals. So a lot of it is contained right there. And my feeling is that if the sense of direction that I'm trying to present is valid, there should be more counties up and down our coastline that would buy into it as well. So my feeling is if we could put out a good product and and we finally find out what the costs would be and then the acquisition price for the individual products, that we might be able to distribute it over a larger area. I mean, if this is as good as I think it could be, should be, it should be statewide.
I would think part of the cost would be offset because it could be a class activity. You know, I mean, I would, usually when we go to the universities, you get some level of compensation back because it's a classroom assignment. And you're not necessarily paying retail, but if I can sit that way.
I agree with you. And what I'm also suggesting is that who would the credits go to? should go to. School that's producing it.
Sure.
And under those circumstances, if, as far as I'm concerned, that's compensation.
That's good marketing for them.
Absolutely. So that's my sense of direction. I'm a very conservative.
Well, to fund this, I mean, have we talked about going to the community mental health organizations? Because I know they have dollars to produce, I know Central Wellness, the one for Benzie Manistee, they try to do prevention. I know they're frequently tasked with after the fact, but if you can prevent it from happening, that's a wonderful thing.
I agree with you entirely. I'm sure the sheriff is certainly aware that all our schools are pipelines for this stuff.
Oh, sure. And there's
And
another,
we've got to stop it. The only way we can stop it is with good education so that the kid can comprehend what's going to be taking place if they dabble. Now, I guarantee you this, and we all know this, we're not going to save every kid. That's just the way life is. People are people. They're going to do what they want. But if we can make an inroad on this catastrophe that's happening in our country, to me, it's worth every effort.
there's.
And I agree.
Another funding revenue that we could have with our Public Act 2 state liquor funding. Benzie County, we have a surplus right now. And I bet that would qualify, this program may qualify for that. So I mean, different funding avenues.
Right.
So we can maybe there's opportunities here.
So where would Mr. Antel present? It wouldn't be the Central Wellness Board. Where would he present this concept
And MRE, I would guess.
to get considered for funding?
And the NMRE, the Northern Michigan Regional Entity, is like, they handle the liquor tax money for what, 17 counties? All of like northern lower Michigan.
Right.
In Benzie County, well, not every county has been as stingy with their PA2 funds that we have, but right now we have a surplus of, at the end of this year, unless there's more programs coming in, we'll have about $140,000 in surplus.
So I think though, that's great. But I think him and I need to meet with Ferris first and figure out what the request is going to be, how much money we're talking, involvement and stuff like that. And so that piece I think will be important a little further down the
Sure,
line.
and that would be more of a regional ask, not just of
Yes.
us.
Yep.
I'd like to share something with you, and I thought about it, and I wasn't really going to bring it up, but I will. When I first moved to this county a lot of years ago, I had the good fortune to be the president of the Kiwanis Club, Beulah Benzonia Kiwanis Club. And I was just a young guy, just back in the mid 60s. And here's all these older stalwarts of the community. And they pushed me ahead. They made me president. And I could see, because of working with medical care facility and so on, a lot of elderly people dying. And there were breaks in the history of these people who saw so much in the past that wasn't being conveyed to the future. So I told the club, what about if we start a historical society? And they wanted to save the history of the area. So they let me go ahead and be the point man for the organization. So we had meetings down here at the courthouse, the old courthouse, and I'm standing in front of groups of people, not preaching, evangelizing. And so from that, we put together the Benzie Area Historical Society and the Benzie Area Historical Museum. And I was the president of that for 6 years, wrote the bylaws. And I figured, well, if it's going to make it, it's going to make it on its own. So I backed out. But a couple of years ago, I was invited to come in and give a little speech at the 50th anniversary. So I've been there, done it, and I know what it is to work with no money And I know one thing that I learned, if it's a philanthropy, people will come out of the woodwork to help. If it's for profit, you're on your own. I think everybody knows that for a fact. So anyways, that's where I'm coming from.
That's a great concept. I don't want to speak for the board, but whatever we can do to help.
Well, I'm under the guidance of Kate, who answers to you, so you know that you're in safe hands with her.
Yes. Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ray.
Anybody have any questions before we move on?
No, I know where my dad always called anything that was illegal way back when I was a kid. Everything was dope. Well, he apparently he knew what dopamine was, because no matter what, it was them kids on the dope and that. I didn't know how smart he was.
So educational aspect is one of the top priorities we saw as a staff brainstorming.
That's right.
We thought that that would be, the most logical way to spend a lot of those dollars was on educational materials, campaign of those sorts. Funding of the drug courts and the body scanner, we thought were the other top two to put money towards. You can see in my memo the list of other items on there. We don't have to go through them now. But we did come up with quite a long list of things to spend those dollars on. But educational really was the top, what we thought was the most important thing to spend majority of those funds on.
The key is to make it so that we can measure real impact.
Mhm.
Any one of these could be good initiatives. I remember when they had the cracked egg in the frying pan, as most of us do. The irony in that is that drug use increased tenfold after it. So it's really a matter of what's the best, what really reaches these people.
Right.
And to Ray's point, I mean, it's out of their control. Once they're addicted, it's really kind of beyond their control.
I'll keep, as we progress with this, you'll all be kept up to date as far as things are going until over evening.
Appreciate that.
The reason I wanted to do a little presentation like this is because I know you're going to be talking to a lot of people. Anytime I can help anybody, just,
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
My sense is it probably doesn't take much to accomplish this financial.
So we're working to set up meetings with Bear State University to really have those conversations with them to see where they're at with it as well. They were very intrigued, and Ray has great connections over there. So I think they're going to be a good partner. I don't think it's going to take a ton of money either. So, but we did feel as a staff that was one of the top priorities to
Been a
spend
great
these
concept to
funds.
be a part of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we have one more, do we have to continue the opioid conversation? Do you want to go through? Okay, we have one more item on the list to discuss the strategic plan, but we're going to take a 5-minute break. What are you thinking?
You're fine. We can talk in the break.
Okay, we take 5 minutes.
There you go.
Okay. All right, we are back in session. There is one more item on our topics for continued discussion, but before we start this conversation, it's come to my attention, there are some folks on the board that have commitments with their children coming up very soon. So I'm gonna, grandchildren and children, and so I'm going to see if everybody would be amenable to having this conversation at our next meeting.
I would.
I would.
I think we ought to stay here today and get this, knock this out.
Katie and I are going to a wrestling match.
Wrestling
meet.
match with a bunch of 6-year-olds.
What's it called?
They call it a
match?
wrestling meet.
Free for all. I guess on a serious note, the only thing I would ask is, I'd ask staff, by us postponing this to the next meeting, what does that do to things that you need to get done? Does it hold you up at all?
No, because really what today was to go over the red line strategic plan. What I did is after last meeting, when we talked about a bunch of goals, which we by far weren't done, I kind of took those and molded them all into the strategic plan. And so what I'd like to now is talk about any other potential goals that the board may have, and then go through that strategic plan and decide what stays, what doesn't stay, and put together a final plan.
Just something to think about, because I'm in favor of adjourning also, but something to think about with a strategic plan. And it's a different approach, but I think that it's one worth talking about, is let's have this be, I'll refer to it as a living plan. What happens with strategic plans is you develop them, you put them on the shelf, refer to them every month or quarter or year, whatever it is. If you make it a living document, that allows you to move stuff around as needs come up. And although it's not widely adopted today, I think that's the best way to approach these things. Because we really don't know what's important to us today could very well change 90 days from now. So let's not try to, carve this in stone, I guess is what I'm saying.
Very good. We will move this to the next agenda for the committee of the whole. With that said, I'm going to open the last public comment. No, you're fine.
I vote for adjournment.
I wanted to bring a component to the body, or some support to the body scanner with a long story. No, it's a really short story. A deputy was transporting a young man who had meth charges to another facility. In the whole, hey, let's bond, or I just need somebody to talk to. He asked the guy, he's like, man, why meth? Why did you get involved in, why are you in drugs? And whether it's true or not, I don't know, but his story was, I didn't used to be addicted to drugs. When did it? And they said, well, when did you become addicted to drugs? He said, I became addicted to drugs in your jail. He goes, somebody smuggled some in. I got a taste of it. I'm now addicted to it. So it's not just the guy who was carrying his own drugs in. He caused another person. So that body scanner can probably do more than just save, we're not going to say they're going to save him because, it's hard. No man cometh thither. But if it never got into that other person, would he have tried it? Would he now also have those same pictures? Just wanted to bring, there's more support to that body scanner.
Sure.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm going to close public comment and look
Motion
for
to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.